Captain Lee Dae-ho walked slowly through the cargo bay of his starship. The metal floor made soft sounds under his boots. He carried a small device that beeped when it found problems. This was his third day checking everything on the ship. They were far from Earth now, traveling to a space station called Kepler Station. The cargo bay was full of boxes and containers. Most held rare metals and crystals that people on other worlds wanted to buy. Dae-ho had been a space captain for 15 years. He knew every sound his ship made. Today, something felt different. His device beeped loudly near the back wall. Dae-ho frowned and walked toward the sound. Behind a stack of metal boxes, he found something that should not be there. A small space had been made between the containers. Inside sat Communications Officer Park So-min. So-min was crying. Her face was red and wet with tears. In her arms, she held a small gray cat. The animal looked calm and comfortable. Its green eyes watched Dae-ho without fear. "Officer Park," Dae-ho said. His voice was not angry, just tired. "You know the rules about animals on spaceships." The Galactic Maritime Code was very clear. No living animals were allowed on starships. This law had been made after something terrible happened long ago. In the year 2387, sick animals from Earth had spread disease to 3 different worlds. Millions of people and aliens had died. Since then, all animals were forbidden in space. So-min looked up at her captain. More. Tears fell from her eyes. "His name is Baek-ho," she said quietly. "He is all I have left." Dae-ho sat down on a nearby box. He was a tall man with kind eyes. He had known So-min for 2 years. She was a good officer who always did her job well. She had never caused trouble before. "Tell me what happened," Dae-ho said. So-min held the cat closer. Baek-ho began to make a soft, rumbling sound. This sound was called purring. It meant the cat was happy and felt safe. "My home was on Kepler Colony 7, So-min said. 3 months ago, raiders attacked us. They came in the night with big ships and powerful weapons. They destroyed everything." Dae-ho had heard about the raid. Pirates had attacked the small farming colony. They had stolen supplies and burned the buildings. Many people had died or been hurt. "My family lived in the main settlement," So-min continued. "My parents, my brother, and my little sister. The raiders hit that area first. By the time I got there from the communications center, it was too late." She stopped talking for a moment. The cat seemed to sense her sadness. It pushed its head against her hand and purred louder. "Baek-ho was hiding in the ruins of our house. He was scared and hungry, but he was alive. He was the only thing left from my old life. I could not leave him behind when the rescue ships came." Dae-ho understood why So-min had broken the law. She had lost everything and everyone she loved. The small cat was her last connection to home. But rules were rules, and breaking them could get them all in trouble. "The law exists for good reasons," Dae-ho said gently. "Animals can carry diseases that might hurt other species. Some aliens are very afraid of creatures they do not know." So-min nodded. She knew about the law. Every person who worked in space had to learn about the great contamination of 2387. It was taught in all the schools and training programs. "I know," she said, "but Baek-ho is healthy. I had him checked by 3 different doctors before we left Earth. They all said he was fine." The cat jumped down from So-min's arms and began to explore the small space. It sniffed at the boxes and rubbed against Dae-ho's leg. The captain looked down at the animal. It was very small, probably weighing less than 4 kilograms. Its gray fur was soft and clean. Its green eyes were bright and alert. Baek-ho sat down in front of Dae-ho and looked up at him. The cat tilted its head to one side as if asking a question. Then it began to purr again. The sound was peaceful and somehow made Dae-ho feel calmer. "What does it do besides make that noise?" Dae-ho asked. "Cats are companion animals," So-min explained. They like to be near people. They can sense when someone is sad or worried and they try to help. Bakho always knew when I was upset. He would come and sit with me until I felt better. Daeho had heard about Earth animals like this, but he had never seen one before. Most people in space grew up on colonies or space stations. They only knew about animals from books and videos. Real Earth animals were rare and special. "How did you hide him during the launch inspections?" Daeho asked. So Min looked embarrassed. "I gave him a mild sleeping medicine that the doctor said was safe. He slept in a special container in my personal luggage. The container blocked the security scanners." This was serious. Hiding anything from security could result in prison time. But Daeho could see that Somin had acted out of love and grief, not criminal intent. The ship's communication system made a sound. "Captain, to the bridge," came the voice of Navigator Oh Tae-young. "We have an urgent message from Kepler Station." Daeho stood up. He looked at Somin and then at the cat. "We will talk about this more later," he said. "For now, keep Bakho hidden. Do not let anyone else see him." As Daeho walked toward the bridge, his mind was full of difficult thoughts. They were still 3 days away from Kepler Station. Once they arrived, he would have to report the animal to the authorities. Bakho would be taken away and probably sent back to Earth. Somin might face punishment for breaking the law, but something about the small cat troubled him. When Bakho had looked at him and purred, Daeho had felt something he had not experienced in years. A sense of peace and calm that seemed to come from outside himself. On the bridge, Navigator Oh Tae-young was waiting with a worried expression. "Captain, we have received a priority message from Kepler Station Command. There is a serious situation developing." Daeho took his position in the captain's chair. "Show me the message." The main screen displayed the face of Station Commander Kim Hyun-woo. The commander looked stressed and tired. "All incoming vessels are advised that the Hegemony Fleet and the Collective Armada have taken positions around Kepler Station. Both sides claim the other has violated the Neutral Zone Treaty. We are requesting all civilian ships to maintain safe distance until the situation is resolved." Tae-young looked at his captain. "Sir, both of those are major military powers. If they start fighting near the station, it could mean war." Daeho felt a cold fear in his stomach. The Hegemony and the Collective had been enemies for over 100 years. They had signed a peace treaty that created neutral zones where neither side could bring military ships. Kepler Station was in one of those neutral zones. "How long until we reach the station?" Daeho asked. 26 hours at current speed," Tae-young replied. "Change course to approach from the outer system. Reduce speed to half. Send a message that we are a civilian merchant vessel carrying standard trade goods. Make sure they know we are not a threat." As the crew began to follow his orders, Daeho thought about the small cat hidden in the cargo bay. The last thing they needed right now was another problem. But somehow he felt that their troubles were just beginning. In the cargo bay, Somin held Bakho close to her chest. The cat seemed to sense that something had changed. He stopped purring and looked toward the front of the ship, as if he could feel the tension growing among the crew. "What is happening, little friend?" Somin whispered to the cat. "I have a feeling our journey is about to become much more dangerous." Neither of them knew that within hours, the small gray cat would become the most important creature in the galaxy. The fate of 2 great empires would soon rest in the paws of an animal that was forbidden to exist in the vast emptiness of space. The alarm on the bridge of Prosperity's Dream began to sound. Red lights flashed as the ship's computer announced an incoming message. Captain Lee Daeho sat up straight in his chair. They were still 6 hours away from Kepler Station. But something was happening. "Captain," Navigator Oh Tae-young called out from his station. 3 large ships are approaching us. They are moving very fast." The main screen changed to show the space around them. 3 dark shapes were getting bigger as they came closer. These ships were much larger than the Prosperity's Dream. They had sharp edges and looked designed for fighting. "Are they friendly or hostile?" Daeho asked. Unknown, sir. They are not responding to our identification signals. Wait, now I am getting something. The screen flickered and showed the face of an alien creature. It had green and brown scales that covered its entire head. Its eyes were yellow and very large. When it opened its mouth to speak, Daeho could see rows of sharp teeth. Human vessel, the creature said through the translation system. This is Commander Vex Kala of the Hegemony Fleet. You will stop your engines and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be considered an act of war. Daeho had never seen a Hegemony soldier before, but he had heard stories. They were a proud, warrior race that valued strength and honor above all else. Their empire controlled dozens of star systems along the galactic rim. Understood, Commander, Daeho replied. We are a peaceful merchant vessel. We carry only trade goods and request safe passage to Kepler Station. The alien commander's scales changed color from brown to deep red. This meant he was angry or suspicious. All vessels must be inspected. Lower your shields and open your docking bay. My boarding party will arrive in 10 minutes. The screen went dark. Daeho looked around at his crew. Engineer Kim Woo-jin looked worried. Security Chief Choi Byung-ho was checking his weapon, even though it would be useless against trained hegemony warriors. What do we do about the cat? Asked Medical Officer Yoon Ha-na. She had learned about Baek Ho earlier that morning, when So-min had brought him to the medical bay for a checkup. Daeho had been thinking about the same thing. If the hegemony soldiers found an illegal animal on their ship, they might arrest the entire crew. But there was no time to find a better hiding place. So-min, he said into the communication system, keep Baek Ho in your quarters and make sure he stays quiet. Do not come out until I give the all-clear signal. Down in her quarters, Communications Officer Park So-min heard the captain's message. She looked at Baek Ho, who was sitting on her bed washing his face with his paw. The cat seemed calm, as if he did not understand the danger they were all in. You need to be very quiet, little friend, So-min whispered. If they find you, we will all be in serious trouble. The hegemony boarding craft attached to the Prosperity's Dream with a loud metal sound. Daeho and his senior officers waited in the main corridor as the airlock opened. 3 hegemony soldiers stepped through, wearing dark armor and carrying energy weapons. The first soldier was Commander Vex Kala, the one they had seen on the screen. He was tall, almost 2.5 meters, with scales that shifted from red to orange as he looked around. Behind him were 2 smaller soldiers, but they were still much larger than any human. I am Sub-Commander Tor Quinn, said the second alien. His scales were darker, almost black, with silver markings. We will inspect your cargo and passenger areas. Any attempt to hide contraband will result in immediate detention. The aliens walked through the ship with heavy steps. Their armor made clicking sounds on the metal floors. Daeho and his officers followed behind, trying to stay calm. The inspection seemed to be going well until they reached the crew quarters section. That was when disaster struck. Baek Ho had been sleeping peacefully in So-min's quarters when the loud sounds of the alien soldiers woke him up. The cat was curious about the new voices and strange smells. Before So-min could stop him, he jumped down from the bed and pushed through the partially open door. The small gray cat walked directly into the corridor where the aliens were conducting their inspection. He sat down in the middle of the hallway and looked up at the 3 huge warriors with bright green eyes. Unknown biological entity detected, Sub-Commander Tor Quinn shouted. His weapon made a high-pitched whining sound as it charged with energy. Possible threat to ship security. Wait, Daeho said quickly, stepping between the weapon and the cat. That is not a threat. It is just a small earth animal called a cat. Commander, Vex Kala pushed past his subordinate to get a better look. His scales shifted from orange to blue, which meant he was curious rather than angry. What is its purpose? Is it a weapon or a tool? Engineer Kim Woo-jin, thinking quickly, stepped forward. No, Commander. Cats are companion animals. On Earth, they live with humans for friendship and comfort. They are known for their peaceful nature and their ability to sense emotions. Bekho seemed completely unafraid of the large aliens. He walked up to Commander Vex Kala and sat down near his feet. Then he began to purr, making the soft, rumbling sound that cats make when they are happy. The sound seemed to have an immediate effect on the hegemony soldiers. Their aggressive postures relaxed slightly. Commander Vex Kala knelt down to get closer to the small creature. His scales continued to shift toward blue and purple, colors that meant peace and wonder. This sound, the commander said slowly, it is pleasant, calming. How does such a small creature produce these vibrations? Medical Officer Yun Hana saw an opportunity to help. Cats purr by vibrating muscles in their throats. The frequency of the sound has been shown to reduce stress and promote healing. Many humans find it very comforting. Bekho looked up at the alien commander and tilted his head to one side. The cat seemed to be studying the large creature with the same curiosity that the alien was showing toward him. Then Bekho did something that surprised everyone. He reached out with one small paw and gently touched the commander's scaled hand. Commander Vex Kala's eyes widened. His scales shifted to colors that none of the humans had seen before, bright silver and gold that seemed to shimmer in the ship's lights. Remarkable. This creature shows no fear, no aggression. In our culture, such behavior indicates great wisdom and strength. Sub-Commander Tor Quinn lowered his weapon completely. Commander, should we report this discovery to Fleet Command? No, Vex Kala said, his voice thoughtful. This requires careful consideration. Captain Deho, this animal is not registered in your cargo manifest. This is a violation of galactic law. Deho felt his heart sink. They had been caught breaking the law, and now they would face punishment. But Commander Vex Kala surprised him. However, the alien continued, I see no threat from this creature. Indeed, it possesses qualities that my people greatly respect. What is its name? So-Min stepped forward, no longer able to hide. His name is Bekho, Commander. He is my companion. I brought him aboard because he is all I have left of my family. The commander looked at So-Min with what might have been sympathy. You have suffered loss. This is something we hegemony understand well. War has taken much from all of us. Bekho continued to purr and rub against the alien's armor. Two soldiers had also relaxed, and their scales showed curious blue and purple patterns. One of them reached down carefully to touch the cat's soft fur. Commander, the third soldier said, this creature's behavior is unlike anything in our military databases. It approaches without weapons or defensive postures. It seeks contact rather than avoiding it. This goes against all known survival instincts. Commander Vex Kala stood up slowly, careful not to disturb the cat who was now sitting on his foot. Perhaps that is because it does not see us as enemies. Captain Deho, your animal has taught my soldiers something today. Fear and aggression are not always the correct responses to the unknown. The commander's communication device beeped. A voice spoke in the harsh language of the hegemony. Vex Kala listened for a moment, then responded in the same language. Captain, he said, turning back to Deho, I have received orders to escort your ship to Kepler Station immediately. The situation there has become more dangerous. The collective Armada has increased their forces, and both sides are preparing for possible conflict. What about Bekho? So-Min asked quietly. Commander Vex Kala looked down at the cat, who was now calmly cleaning his paw. For now, your companion will remain with you. But you should know that other inspections are likely. The collective has very different views about unknown biological entities. They may not be as understanding as we have been. The hegemony soldiers prepared to leave, but before they reached the airlock, Commander Vex Kala turned back one last time. "Captain Daeho," he said, "guard that creature well. I have a feeling that before this crisis is over, it may prove to be more important than any of us can imagine." As the aliens departed and their ship moved away, the crew of the Prosperity's Dream gathered in the corridor around Bekho. The small cat looked up at all the worried faces around him and began to purr again, as if reassuring them that everything would be fine. But none of them knew that their encounter with the hegemony was only the beginning. Soon they would face an even greater challenge, and once again, the fate of their mission would depend on one small gray cat who seemed to understand the hearts of beings across the galaxy. Security Chief Choi Byung-ho shook his head in amazement. "In 20 years of space travel, I have never seen anything like that. Those warriors were ready to fight, but that cat turned them into gentle giants with just a purr and a touch." As they prepared to continue their journey to Kepler Station, none of them realized that word of the Harmony creature was already spreading through the hegemony fleet, and soon it would reach the ears of their greatest enemies. 2 hours after the hegemony inspection, the Prosperity's Dream received another urgent message. This time it came from ships that looked completely different from the warrior vessels they had just encountered. The collective ships were smooth and white, shaped like giant crystals that seemed to glow with their own light. Captain Lee Dae-ho watched the main screen as 3 of these crystal ships surrounded his vessel. Unlike the aggressive approach of the hegemony, these ships moved in perfect formation, as if they were dancing together in space. "Captain," Navigator Oh Tae-young reported, "the collective ships are sending us a message, but it is not like normal communication. They are using some kind of musical signal." The bridge filled with a strange humming sound. It was not unpleasant, but it made everyone feel slightly dizzy. The sound seemed to come from all directions at once, creating patterns that were almost like a song. Then the humming stopped, and a figure appeared on the main screen. The being that looked at them was unlike anything they had ever seen. Admiral Nix Vera of the Collective Armada had a body that looked like it was made of clear crystal. Light moved through her form in flowing patterns, changing colors as she spoke. "Human vessel," Admiral Nix Vera said. "This is a formal inspection under Collective Emergency Protocol 7. We have detected an unregistered biological signature aboard your ship. You will allow immediate boarding for investigation." Her voice sounded like several people speaking at the same time, all in perfect harmony. This was because the collective beings shared their thoughts with each other. When one spoke, the ideas of many came through their voice. "Admiral," Daeho replied carefully, "we are a peaceful merchant vessel. We have already been inspected by the hegemony fleet and found to be in compliance with all regulations." The crystal being's light patterns shifted to angry red and orange colors. "The hegemony inspection is not recognized by the collective. Their primitive methods cannot detect advanced biological threats. Prepare for immediate boarding." Down in her quarters, Communications Officer Park So-min heard the announcement and looked at Baek-ho with worry. The cat was sleeping peacefully on her bed, completely unaware of the new danger approaching. "What are we going to do now, little friend?" she whispered. "The collective is very different from the hegemony. They might not be as understanding." Medical Officer Yoon Ha-na had been studying everything she could find about the collective since the first alien contact. She came to the bridge with a worried expression. "Captain," she said quietly, "the collective operates as a hive mind. They share all thoughts and emotions through their crystal bodies. They have very little tolerance for chaos or unpredictability. Individual behavior confuses and frightens them." Engineer Kim Woo-jin looked concerned. "That could be a problem. Cats are known for being independent and unpredictable. Bekho might be exactly the kind of thing that scares them." Security Chief Choi Byung-ho checked his security systems. "Should we try to hide the cat better this time?" Daeho thought for a moment. "No, the hegemony commander warned us that the collective would be different. But hiding Bekho did not work before. Maybe honesty is our best choice." the collective boarding craft attached to their ship with no sound at all. When the airlock opened, 3 beings made of living crystals stepped through. They moved together in perfect synchronization, their bodies glowing with the same patterns of light. Admiral Nyx Vera was the tallest of the 3. Her crystal form was more complex than the others, with intricate patterns that seemed to show her rank and experience. The light that flowed through her body pulsed in rhythm with some unheard music. "We are here to investigate the biological anomaly," she announced. "All crew members will remain in designated areas while we conduct our examination." The collective beings began their inspection in the cargo bay. Their methods were completely different from the hegemony soldiers. Instead of looking with their eyes and touching things with their hands, they seemed to sense everything around them through the patterns of light in their bodies. "Biological signature detected in crew quarters section," announced one of the other beings. "Pattern suggests unknown Earth origin life form." Admiral Nyx Vera's lights shifted to bright yellow, which meant high alert. "Possible contamination. Threat. All crew members step back to safe distance." The 3 crystal beings moved toward So-Min's quarters like a single organism. Their lights pulsed faster as they got closer to the source of the biological reading. But before they could reach the door, it opened, and So-Min stepped out. She was carrying Baek Ho in her arms. The small gray cat looked around with curious green eyes at the strange, glowing beings. Unlike his reaction to the hegemony soldiers, Baek Ho did not immediately approach the collective members. Instead, he seemed to be listening to something that only he could hear. "Admiral," So-Min said bravely, "this is Baek Ho. He is my companion animal from Earth. He means no harm to anyone." Admiral Nyx Vera's light patterns shifted rapidly through several colors. "Unregistered biological entity confirmed. This creature poses a significant risk of biological and psychological contamination to collective operations." The other crystal beings moved closer, their bodies glowing brighter with what appeared to be defensive energy. Baek Ho watched them carefully, his head tilted to one side as if he was trying to understand something. Then something remarkable happened. Instead of his usual purring, Baek Ho began to make a different sound. He started with soft trills and chirps, sounds that cats sometimes make when they are trying to communicate. But as he continued, the sounds began to form patterns. The patterns matched the musical humming that the collective ships had used for communication. Admiral Nyx Vera stopped moving. Her light patterns froze in place, showing complete surprise. The other 2 beings also stopped, their crystalline forms resonating with harmonics that seemed to answer Baek Ho's calls. "Impossible," Admiral Nyx Vera said, her multiple voices, showing amazement. "This creature is producing harmonic frequencies that match our communication protocols. How does a non-networked biological entity achieve synchronization with the collective consciousness?" Baek Ho jumped down from So-Min's arms and walked slowly toward the crystal beings. He sat down in front of Admiral Nyx Vera and continued his musical trilling. The sounds he made seemed to create a bridge between his simple animal consciousness and the complex shared mind of the collective. Medical Officer Yoon Ha-na stepped forward carefully. "Admiral, I have been studying Baek Ho since he was discovered. Cats on Earth have an ability to sense the emotional states of other beings. They can adjust their behavior to provide comfort and reduce stress. Perhaps Baek Ho is naturally adapting to match what he perceives as your communication needs." "This is unprecedented," one of the other collective beings said. "The creature shows evidence of empathic resonance across species barriers. It is responding to our harmonic matrix without technological interface." Admiral Nyx Vera knelt down to get closer to Baek Ho. As she did, her light patterns began to change. Instead of the harsh yellows and reds of alarm, softer blues and greens began to flow through her crystal body. These were colors that the collective used to show peace and wonder. The biological entity designated Baek Ho is creating harmonic Bridges that we believed were only possible through direct neural connection, Admiral Nix Vera said. This challenges fundamental assumptions about consciousness and communication. Beck-Ho rubbed against the Admiral's crystal leg, just as he had done with Commander Vex Kayla. But instead of purring, he continued his musical trilling, creating sounds that seemed to make the collective beings more calm and focused. Admiral, Somin said quietly, Beck-Ho lost his family too. Maybe he understands what it feels like to be separated from the ones you share your thoughts with. The Admiral's light patterns shifted to deep purple, a color that showed deep thought and consideration. The collective processes this information. The creature demonstrates empathic intelligence that transcends normal biological limitations. Captain Deho watched this interaction with growing amazement. Once again, Beck-Ho had turned a dangerous situation into something peaceful and wonder-filled. The small cat seemed to have an ability to understand what different beings needed, even when those beings were completely unlike anything from his home world. Captain Deho, Admiral Nix Vera said, standing up slowly, the collective has made a decision. This creature will not be confiscated or destroyed. Its abilities require further study, but it will remain under your protection. Thank you, Admiral, Deho said with relief. However, the Admiral continued, you must understand that both the hegemony and the collective now know about this creature. Word of its abilities will spread quickly through both fleets. This may create complications that you are not prepared for. Engineer Kim Woo asked. What kind of complications? Admiral Nix Vera's lights pulsed with concern. Both empires have been searching for new methods to understand their enemies. A creature that can communicate across species barriers might be seen as a valuable intelligence asset. There may be those who wish to take possession of your companion for military purposes. The thought of losing Beck-Ho made Somin hold the cat closer. He is not a weapon. He is just a small animal who wants to help people feel. Kepler Station appeared on the main screen like a giant metal flower floating in space. The station was enormous, with 5 long arms extending from a central hub. Normally, it would be busy with ships coming and going, carrying trade goods and passengers between the different star systems. Today, Kepler Station looked like the center of a war zone. Captain Lee Dae-Ho counted the ships on his scanner and felt his stomach tighten with worry. 43 hegemony warships held position on one side of the station. 37 collective crystal vessels formed a perfect geometric pattern on the other side. Between them, the space around the station crackled with the energy of charged weapons and raised shields. Captain, Navigator Oh Tae-young reported, Kepler Station Control is ordering all civilian vessels to maintain distance. They say the situation is too dangerous for normal docking procedures. Engineer Kim Woo-jin studied the readings from both fleets. Sir, both sides have their weapons powered and ready to fire. If fighting starts here, the station and everyone on it could be destroyed. Down in her quarters, Communications Officer Park So-min held Beck-Ho close to her chest. The small cat seemed to sense the tension throughout the ship. Instead of his usual playful behavior, he sat quietly and looked toward the front of the ship, as if he could feel the danger waiting ahead. I know you helped us with the inspections, So-min whispered to him. But this is much bigger than anything we have faced before. On the bridge, Captain Deho received 2 urgent messages at almost the same time. The first came from Commander Vex Kayla of the Hegemony Fleet. The second was from Admiral Nix Vera of the Collective Armada. Both messages said the same thing in different ways. Both alien commanders wanted to meet with the crew of the Prosperity's Dream immediately. This is getting complicated, Security Chief Choi Byung-ho said. If we meet with one side, the other will think we are taking sides in their conflict. Medical Officer Yoon Ha-na had been thinking about their situation. Captain, maybe that is exactly what they need. Someone who is not part of their conflict. Someone neutral who can help them understand each other. Dae-Ho looked at his crew. They were all good people who had signed up for a simple trading mission. None of them had expected to become involved in an interstellar crisis. But here they were, and they had to make a choice. Contact both commanders, Deho decided. Tell them we will meet with both of them, but only if they agree to meet together aboard our ship. Make it clear that we are not taking sides with anyone. The response came quickly. Commander Vex Kala's scales showed anger at first, but then shifted to curiosity. Admiral Nix Vera's crystal form pulsed with rapid calculations as the collective mind considered this unusual proposal. After an hour of tense negotiations, both sides agreed to the meeting. But they had conditions. No weapons would be allowed. Aboard the human ship, both commanders could bring only one aid each, and the meeting would be limited to 2 hours. Captain, Tae-young said with worry, are we really going to have the two most powerful military leaders in this sector sitting in our conference room at the same time? That appears to be exactly what we are doing, Deho replied. And somehow I think Baek-ho is going to play a big part in what happens next. So-min brought Baek-ho to the conference room before the alien leaders arrived. The small cat explored the space, sniffing at the chairs and rubbing against the table legs. He seemed completely calm, as if meeting with alien commanders was something he did every day. Commander Vex Kala arrived first. The tall reptilian warrior had to duck through the doorway of the human ship. His scales were showing patterns of deep blue and silver, colors that meant he was trying to stay calm and peaceful. With him came Sub-Commander Tor Quinn, the same soldier who had almost shot Baek-ho during their first encounter. Admiral Nix Vera transported aboard using collective technology that turned her crystal body into pure light for a few seconds. When she rematerialized in the conference room, she was accompanied by another crystal being who introduced himself as Coordinator Zith Mal. For a moment, the two groups of aliens simply stared at each other across the conference table. The hegemony and the collective had been enemies for over a century. This was the first time their leaders had been in the same room without weapons or shields between them. The tension in the room was so thick that it seemed hard to breathe. Commander Vex Kala's scales began to shift toward red, showing rising aggression. Admiral Nix Vera's crystal form started to pulse with harsh yellow light, indicating high alert status. That was when Baek-ho decided to intervene. The small gray cat jumped onto the conference table and walked directly to the center, between the two groups of aliens. He sat down and looked back and forth between them, as if he was trying to decide which group needed his attention more. Then he began to purr and make his musical trilling sounds at the same time. The combination created a sound that seemed to fill the room with peaceful energy. Commander Vex Kala's scales slowly shifted back to blue and purple. Admiral Nix Vera's harsh yellow lights faded to gentle green and blue patterns. Your companion continues to amaze, Commander Vex Kala said to Captain Deho. Even in the presence of ancient enemies, it shows no fear or hostility. Admiral Nix Vera's multiple voices harmonized in agreement. The creature demonstrates emotional intelligence that surpasses our most advanced psychological algorithms. It seems to understand the need for peace even when trained warriors cannot find it. Baek-ho walked over to Commander Vex Kala and rubbed against his scaled arm. Then he walked to Admiral Nix Vera and sat down near her crystal form, continuing his calming sounds. The alien leaders watched this with growing amazement. Commander, Admiral Nix Vera said carefully, perhaps we should discuss why we are both here instead of fighting over it. For the first time in anyone's memory, the hegemony leader actually listened to a suggestion from the collective. Admiral, you speak wisdom. Our fleets are prepared for battle, but neither of us truly wants war. Sub-Commander Tor Quinn looked surprised. Sir, the collective has violated the Neutral Zone Treaty by bringing warships into this sector. Coordinator Zith Mal's crystal form pulsed with defensive energy. The hegemony forces arrived first. We came here only to protect our research installations from your military buildup. Captain Deho watched this exchange with growing understanding. Wait, he said. Are you telling me that both of you came here because you thought the other side was preparing to attack? Commander Vex Kala's scales showed embarrassment, a color pattern that few humans had ever seen. Our scouts reported collective ships gathering near the neutral zone. We interpreted this as preparation for territorial expansion. Admiral Nix Vera's lights pulsed with similar emotions. Our monitoring systems detected massive hegemony fleet movements toward our research facilities. We calculated a high probability of aggressive action. Engineer Kim Woo-jin leaned forward. So you are both here for defensive reasons, but each side thought the other was being aggressive? The two alien leaders looked at each other across the table. Bayako continued to move between them, purring and trilling, creating a bridge of calm sound that seemed to help them think more clearly. There is another factor, Commander Vex Kala said slowly. Our outer colonies have been suffering attacks from unknown raiders. We thought the collective might be behind these attacks. Admiral Nix Vera's crystal form brightened with surprise. The collective has experienced similar raids on our research outposts. We believe the hegemony was responsible for these attacks. The room fell silent except for Baek Ho's peaceful sounds. Both alien leaders were realizing that they had been preparing for war against each other when their real enemy might be someone else entirely. So Min spoke up quietly. Maybe you are not each other's enemy. Maybe you have a common threat that neither of you has identified yet. Sub-Commander Tor Quinn checked his data pad. Commander, if we compare our attack reports with their raid information, we might be able to find patterns. Coordinator Zithmal's lights pulsed with rapid calculations. The collective mind is processing this possibility. Cross-referencing our data with hegemony reports could reveal the true source of these attacks. As the two groups of aliens began to share information, Baek Ho settled down in the center of the table and began to clean his fur. He seemed satisfied that his work here was done, at least for now. Captain Daeho watched with amazement as century-old enemies began to work together, all because a small cat had helped them stay calm enough to actually listen to each other. The meeting that was supposed to last 2 hours continued for 6 hours, as both sides discovered how much they had in common. Medical Officer Yoon Ha-na made notes about Baek Ho's behavior throughout the meeting. Captain, I think our cat is not just calming these beings down. He is actually helping them communicate better. When he makes his sounds, they seem to understand each other more clearly. As the meeting finally ended, both alien leaders stood to leave. But first, they both approached Baek Ho, who was now sleeping peacefully on the conference table. Small Earth creature, Commander Vex Kala said softly, you have done something today that trained diplomats could not accomplish in 100 years. Admiral Nix Vera's crystal form glowed with warm, grateful colors. The collective will remember this moment. You have shown us that communication is possible even between the most different forms of consciousness. As the alien leaders returned to their ships, Captain Daeho looked down at Baek Ho, who was stretching and yawning as he woke up from his nap. Little friend, Daeho said quietly, I think you just prevented a war, but something tells me our adventure is just beginning. Outside the ship, both alien fleets began to move into new positions. Instead of preparing for battle, they were forming a joint task force to investigate the mysterious raiders who had been attacking both empires. The small gray cat had done the impossible. He had turned enemies into allies, all with the simple power of trust and peaceful communication. 3 days after the historic meeting between Commander Vex Kala and Admiral Nix Vera, the joint task force was working together to solve the mystery of the raider attacks. Ships from both the hegemony and the collective were sharing information, for the first time in over a century. But problems were starting to appear. Navigator Oh Tae-young was monitoring the communication channels between the two fleets when he noticed something strange. He called Captain Lee Daeho to his station with a worried expression. Captain, I think we have a serious problem, Tae-young said. Listen to these messages between the hegemony and collective commanders. The first message came from Sub-Commander Tor Quinn to the collective ships. Hegemony forces request immediate withdrawal of crystal vessels from Sector 7. Your presence threatens our operational security. The response from Coordinator Zith Mal sounded equally hostile. Collective units will not retreat from lawful positions. Hegemony demands are unreasonable and aggressive. Daeho frowned. That does not sound like the cooperation we saw 3 days ago. What happened to change their attitudes? That is what worries me, Tae-young replied. I have been recording all their communications since the meeting. When they talk to us, both sides are friendly and cooperative. But when they talk to each other through their translation systems, every message sounds like a threat or an insult. Medical, Officer Yoon Ha-na joined them at the navigation station. Captain, I think there might be a problem with their universal translators. Different species express ideas in very different ways. What sounds polite in one language might sound rude in another. Engineer Kim Woo-jin looked up from his repair. Work. The translation systems are supposed to handle those differences automatically, but maybe they are not working properly when dealing with species that have been enemies for so long. Down in her quarters, Communications Officer Park So-min was playing with Baek Ho when the ship's communication system announced an emergency meeting. She picked up the cat and headed for the conference room, knowing that somehow Baek Ho always seemed to be part of the solution to their problems. In the conference room, Captain Daeho spread out the communication logs on the main table. The documents showed a clear pattern. Every direct communication between humans and either alien species was friendly and productive, but every message between the hegemony and the collective was full of misunderstandings and apparent hostility. Look at this message from Commander Vex Kala. Daeho pointed to one of the reports. In his language, he is asking politely for the collective ships to move to a different position so both fleets can work more efficiently. But the translation system is converting his polite request into what sounds like a military demand. So-min sat down with Baek Ho in her lap. The cat looked at the documents as if he could read them, then began to purr softly. What about messages going the other direction? Same problem, Tae-young replied. When Admiral Nix Vera explains collective operational procedures, her careful explanations are being translated as lectures about hegemony incompetence. Security Chief Choi Byung-ho studied the pattern. So they are not actually threatening each other. The translation computers are making them sound hostile when they are trying to be cooperative. Exactly, Ha-na said. And it is getting worse. Each side thinks the other is being rude, so they start using stronger language to make their points clear. The translation system makes that sound even more hostile, which makes the other side respond with even stronger language. Engineer Woo Jin pulled up the technical specifications for the universal translation systems. I see the problem. These systems were programmed during the war between the hegemony and the collective. The computers learned to translate based on hostile communications between the two species. They assumed that any message between these enemies must be aggressive or threatening. Baek Ho jumped down from So-min's lap and walked over to the documents spread on the table. He sat down in the middle of the papers and looked up at the humans as if asking what they were going to do about this problem. We need to find a way to fix their communication, Daeho said. If they keep misunderstanding each other, they will go back to being enemies instead of working together. But how do we fix translation systems that belong to two different alien empires? Choi asked. So-min reached over to pet Baek Ho, who had started his musical trilling sounds. Maybe we do not need to fix their systems. Maybe we need to help them understand each other in a different way. Ha-na looked thoughtful. When Baek Ho was in the room during their meeting, both sides seemed to communicate much better. Maybe his presence somehow helps them focus on the meaning behind the words, instead of just the words themselves. That is an interesting theory, Woo Jin said. When people are calm and focused, they listen more carefully. They try harder to understand what the other person really means. Tae Young checked his instruments. Captain, we are receiving urgent messages from both fleets. They want another meeting to discuss serious communication problems that are threatening their cooperation. Dae-ho made a decision. Set up another meeting in our conference room, but this time, make it clear that Baek-ho will be present throughout the entire discussion. Tell them we believe he can help prevent misunderstandings. An hour later, both alien commanders were back aboard the Prosperity's Dream. This time, the tension between them was obvious from the moment they entered the conference room. Commander Vex Kala's scales showed angry red patterns, while Admiral Nix Vera's crystal form pulsed with defensive yellow lights. "Admiral," Commander Vex Kala said stiffly, "your forces have been deliberately interfering with our patrol routes, despite our clear requests for coordination." Admiral Nix Vera's multiple voices harmonized in what sounded like cold anger. "Commander, your accusations are without merit. Hegemony demands for territorial concessions exceed the scope of our cooperation. Agreement." The two leaders glared at each other across the table. The atmosphere in the room was becoming dangerous, as if old hatreds were about to overcome the fragile peace they had built. That was when So-min placed Baek-ho on the conference table between the two angry aliens. The small gray cat looked back, and forth between the hostile commanders, then began his combination of purring and musical trilling. The sound filled the room with peaceful energy, just as it had during their first meeting. "Wait," Commander Vex Kala said, his scales beginning to shift toward calmer colors. "Admiral, would you please repeat what you just said, but speak more slowly?" Admiral Nix Vera's harsh lights faded slightly. "I said that some of your requests seem to go beyond what we agreed to cooperate on. But now that I think about it, perhaps my translation system is not conveying my meaning accurately." The Hegemony Commander's scales shifted to thoughtful blue. "You are right. When I listen carefully to your actual words, instead of focusing on how they are translated, I can hear that you are trying to be reasonable." Baek-ho walked over to Commander Vex Kala and rubbed against his arm, then moved to Admiral Nix Vera and sat near her crystal form. His calming sounds continued to help both leaders stay relaxed and focused. "Commander," Admiral Nix Vera said carefully, "when you asked for patrol route changes, were you trying to create more efficient search patterns for finding the raiders?" "Yes, exactly," Vex Kala replied. "But our translation computers made my request sound like a territorial demand, did they not?" Captain Dae-ho decided to intervene. "Both of your translation systems were programmed during wartime. They learned to interpret communications between your species as hostile because that was the only kind of communication happening during the war." Engineer Woo Jin brought up the technical data on his portable display. "The computers assume that anything one of you says to the other must be a threat or an insult. They translate neutral requests as demands and helpful suggestions as criticisms." Admiral Nix Vera's lights pulsed with rapid calculations. "This explains many of the communication failures between our species over the past century. We have been arguing with mistranslations instead of discussing actual ideas." "But how do we fix something this complex?" Sub-Commander Tor Quinn asked. So-min, who had been watching Baek-ho carefully, had an idea. "Maybe we do not need to fix the translation systems right away. Maybe we need to change how you communicate with each other." Medical Officer Hanan nodded. "When Baek-ho is present, you both naturally speak more slowly and think more carefully about your words. You focus on understanding each other instead of defending against perceived attacks." "You could new communication protocols," Captain Dae-ho suggested. "Instead of using your automatic translation systems, you could have your messages translated by neutral parties who understand both cultures." Coordinator Zithmal's crystal form brightened with interest. "The collective finds merit in this approach. We could create joint translation teams with members from both species working together." Commander Vex Kala's scales showed approval. This would also help our people learn to understand each other better. Translation is not just about converting words. It is about understanding the thoughts and feelings behind the words. As the meeting continued, both alien leaders began to speak more carefully and listen more closely to each other. With Bakho's calming presence helping them stay focused, they were 6 weeks after the first meeting between Commander Vex Kala and Admiral Nix Vera. The entire galaxy had changed. The Joint Task Force had not only found the mysterious raiders, but had discovered something that shocked both empires to their core. The raiders were not from either the hegemony or the collective. They were not even from known space. They came from beyond the galactic rim, from a place where no one had ever explored. These beings had been testing the defenses of both empires, preparing for a massive invasion that would have destroyed everything. But working together, the hegemony and collective forces had stopped the threat before it could grow. The cooperation that began with a small gray cat in a Starship conference room had saved countless lives across dozens of worlds. Now, representatives from across the galaxy were gathering aboard the Prosperity's Dream for something unprecedented in galactic history. They were going to sign a permanent peace treaty between the two greatest military powers in known space. Captain Lee Dae-ho stood in the main cargo bay, which had been converted into a ceremony hall for the occasion. The space was filled with beings from dozens of different species, all come to witness this historic moment. Diplomats, military officers, scientists, and journalists from every corner of the galaxy crowded into the human merchant vessel. At the center of it all sat Communications Officer Park So-min, holding Baek-ho in her lap. The small gray cat now wore a special harness that had been designed by the finest craftsmen from both empires. On one side was the symbol of the hegemony, made from scales that changed color like those of their warriors. On the other side was the emblem of the collective, crafted from living crystal that pulsed with gentle light. "Are you ready for this, little friend?" So-min whispered to Baek-ho. "You are about to become the most famous cat in galactic history." Baek-ho purred softly and rubbed his head against her hand. He seemed completely calm, as if being the center of attention for thousands of beings was just another normal day. Commander Vex Kala entered the cargo bay, wearing ceremonial armor that showed his highest rank and honors. His scales displayed patterns of deep blue and gold, colors that meant peace and celebration in hegemony culture. Behind him came representatives from every major world in the hegemony empire. Admiral Nix Vera materialized in the center of the room using collective transport technology. Her crystal form had been specially modified for the ceremony, with patterns of light that created beautiful flowing designs throughout her transparent body. With her came the senior members of the Collective Council, their combined consciousness, representing billions of minds across their territory. Medical Officer Yoon Ha-na watched the proceedings with amazement. Over the past weeks, she had been studying Bakho constantly, trying to understand how one small animal could have such a profound effect on interstellar relations. Her research was already being studied by scientists across the galaxy. "Captain," she said to Dae-ho, "I still cannot fully explain what Bakho does. His brain scans show normal cat intelligence, but somehow he can sense and respond to the emotional needs of beings that evolved on completely different worlds." Engineer Kim Woo-jin adjusted the recording equipment that would broadcast the ceremony to every inhabited world in known space. "Maybe that is the point," he said. "Sometimes the most important things are the simplest ones. Baek-ho just treats everyone with kindness and trust." The ceremony began with traditional honors from both empires. Hegemony war drums played ancient songs of victory and peace. Collective harmonic crystals created music that touched the souls of every being present, regardless of species. Then Commander Vex Kala stepped forward to address the assembled representatives. "Friends and allies," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the cargo bay. We gather today to mark the end of an age of conflict and the beginning of an era of cooperation. This transformation did not come from the wisdom of generals or the cleverness of diplomats. It came from the simple truth that a small Earth creature showed us. The commander walked over to where So-min sat with Baek Ho. He knelt down so that he was at eye level with the cat, just as he had done during their first meeting. Baek Ho of Earth, Vex Kala said formally, you have taught the hegemony empire that strength comes not from conquering enemies, but from making friends of strangers. You showed us that the greatest warrior is one who can bring peace without drawing a weapon. Baek Ho looked up at the massive alien commander and began to purr. The sound carried throughout the cargo bay, creating a moment of perfect, peaceful silence. Admiral Nix Vera approached next, her crystal form glowing with warm, grateful colors. Small ambassador, she said, her multiple voices harmonizing in perfect unity. The collective consciousness has been forever changed by your presence. You demonstrated that communication is not merely the exchange of information, but the sharing of understanding and compassion across all boundaries. She reached out with one crystalline hand and gently touched Baek Ho's head. The cat rubbed against her crystal fingers and made his musical trilling sounds, creating harmonics that resonated through her body and filled her with peaceful energy. The collective has processed extensive data about your abilities, Admiral Nix Vera continued. Our analysis suggests that you represent something we had believed impossible, the ability to understand and respond to consciousness itself, regardless of its form or origin. Captain Daeho stepped forward to represent Earth and humanity at the ceremony. He looked out at the crowd of alien beings, all of whom had come together because of events that started when his crew discovered a stowaway cat in their cargo bay. Distinguished representatives, Daeho said, when humans first reached for the stars, we brought many things with us. We brought our technology, our art, our dreams of exploration and discovery. But perhaps our greatest gift to the galaxy was something much simpler, the idea that different forms of life can live together in peace and friendship. He gestured toward Baek Ho, who was now contentedly washing his face with his paw. This small cat represents the best of what Earth has to offer. Not our weapons or our machines, but our belief that understanding and compassion can overcome any difference, no matter how great. Security Chief Choi Byung-ho, who had been skeptical of the entire situation from the beginning, found himself deeply moved by what he was witnessing. 6 weeks ago, I thought that cat was going to get us all arrested, he said quietly to Navigator. Oh, Tae-young, now I am watching him help create peace between empires that have been enemies for over a century. The most amazing part, Tae-young replied, is that he did it just by being himself. He did not need weapons or technology or special training. He just needed to be kind and trusting. The actual signing of the Kepler Accords took place at a specially designed table that could accommodate beings of many different sizes and physical forms. The treaty documents were written in dozens of languages and stored in multiple formats, from traditional paper to crystalline memory matrices. As the leaders signed their names and seals to the historic agreement, Baek Ho sat quietly in the center of the table, watching the proceedings with bright green eyes. Occasionally, he would purr or make his musical sounds, as if encouraging the signing process. The accords went far beyond a simple peace treaty. They established joint exploration missions to discover what other threats might exist beyond the galactic rim. They created cultural exchange programs so that young beings from both empires could learn about each other. They set up emergency cooperation protocols for dealing with natural disasters and other crises. Most importantly for the future, they included the companion animal provision, which rewrote galactic law to allow specially trained animals to serve as diplomatic assistants and cultural ambassadors. The Galactic Council hereby recognizes, Admiral Nix Vera read from the treaty, that certain Earth animals possess unique abilities to facilitate communication and understanding between different species. These animals may be granted special diplomatic status and may accompany their human partners on missions of peace and exploration. When the signing was complete, both alien leaders turned to address Bayek Ho directly. Ambassador Bayek Ho, Commander Vex Kala said with great formality, "By the authority granted to me by the Hegemony Empire, I hereby name you an honorary warrior of the First Circle, with all the rights and honors that this title brings." Admiral Nix Vera's crystal form glowed with ceremonial patterns. "By the collective will of all collective minds, we designate you as a bridge consciousness, a being who connects different forms of awareness across the barriers of species and culture." Baek Ho responded to these honors by jumping down from the signing table and walking among the crowd of alien diplomats. He rubbed against scaled legs and crystal forms, purred at beings made of energy, and somehow made each representative feel welcomed and understood. As the ceremony concluded and the various alien delegations prepared to return to their ships, Engineer Wu Jin made an observation that would be quoted in history books for generations to come. "Humans brought many gifts to the galaxy," he said to the assembled crowd. "We shared our technology, our art, our philosophy, and our dreams of what the universe could become. But perhaps our greatest contribution was the simple idea that the most complex problems sometimes have the simplest solutions." Medical Officer Hana completed her final report on Baek Ho's abilities as the ceremony ended. "Subject demonstrates that emotional intelligence and empathy transcend species boundaries," she wrote. "His success suggests that peaceful interstellar relations depend not on perfect understanding of alien psychology, but on the willingness to approach others with trust and compassion." 6 months later, the Prosperity's Dream had been officially designated as the first galactic diplomatic vessel, with Captain Dae Ho and his crew serving as neutral mediators for interspecies disputes. Similar programs had begun throughout known space, with other Earth animals being trained to serve as diplomatic companions. The ship's corridors now echoed with the sounds of many different species working together. Hegemony warriors served, alongside collective scientists, all learning from each other and from the human crew who had brought them together. And in the captain's quarters, Baek Ho continued to do what cats do best, bringing comfort and peace to those around him, one purr at a time. Years later, when historians studied this period, they would mark the signing of the Kepler Accords as the beginning of the true galactic community. Not a community based on conquest or domination, but one founded on the understanding that all conscious beings, regardless of their form or origin, shared the same basic needs for safety, understanding, and companionship. The age of interstellar warfare had ended not with great battles or brilliant strategies, but with the patient wisdom of a small gray cat who understood that sometimes the best way to make peace is simply to show others that you trust them. In his final log entry about the historic mission, Captain Dae Ho wrote, "Today we learn that the universe is not as cold and hostile as we once believed. Wherever consciousness exists, there also exists the capacity for understanding, friendship, and love. Sometimes it just takes the right messenger to help us remember that truth." And in a small bed in the captain's quarters, that messenger slept peacefully, dreaming perhaps of the day when all beings across the galaxy would learn to purr together in harmony among the stars.